Here we go. Pete Hymans, also known as the Glass Gun, is a Northern California baby boomer who agonized with the rest of the nation as the 4 days of the JFK assassination unfolded. At Whittier College, Hymans studied political science, photography, and creative writing. As a writer-photographer for the college newspaper, he met and photographed Bobby Kennedy.
It's all good. I got everything taken care of.
2 days before his murder.
We just had a little hiccup.
The mishandling of the evidence around Bobby's death spot welded Hymans' research passion into his life. He worked with several of the very early research pioneers. Hymans is the official photographer for several conferences where he is highly praised for his still photography and video interviews. His solution orientation and devotion to truth captivates and informs in a fresh way and without excessive detail. Hymans' knowledge and insights around RFK's killing and its current painful reverberations will be addressed today at our conference. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mr. Pete Hymans.
Thank you so very much, Casey. Am I audible? Can you hear me? I don't hear you. So,
Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, I like to say that I'm 57 and dyslexic. Age creeps up on you, and I turned 75 last month, and it's kind of scary because it seems like the older I get, the more interested I get in things, the more deep I want to go, and the more I fall in love with humanity. And that's really my purpose for being here, is because I feel that the work that we are all doing has a direct effect on the future of our species. And earlier I was looking at the people in the audience, a lot of people I know, and I've spent time with at the different conferences. And then I look at this all-star cast of people who are speaking here. And it reminds me, back when I was little, there used to be a song called Please Mr. Custer. It was about a soldier who was with General George Armstrong Custer, ready to go into battle. And he says, "What am I doing here?" Well, I look at the other speakers here and the level of their research and the books that they publish and the movies they produce. And all I can say is, thanks for having me. And I hope I deliver and take you to places that you want to go. One question is, how many young students do we have in the live audience? Can somebody tell me how many students are out there?
Right now, there's only one in the room at the moment. That doesn't mean that we may not have some more come in here soon.
Okay, well, a lot of this presentation is modeled after one I did earlier when there were several students. First thing I want to say is there's stuff about me in here, but I'm not making this about me. It's about the fact that I was just a young kid, California kid, and I stumbled into where I am now. So when you see pictures of me, just remember it's about my evolution to being where I am, and it's not self-aggrandizement. One other thing before we get rolling here is I heard Casey make reference to country western music a little earlier, and got me to thinking about, with all this augmented reality and 3D and electronic controls of cars and stuff, it won't be long before we have a country western song where the guy's truck up and leaves him. So this is a big honor. I guess I should get my PowerPoint program up. Let's see how we do here. Can you see my PowerPoint?
We don't have your PowerPoint yet. Make sure that you click share screen and then click on your PowerPoint.
Okay, let me see here. Okay, I'm looking for share screen. There it is. Boom.
Okay, drag it over a little bit there or make it full screen.
Okay, and full screen is right there. Should be.
Go up on your PowerPoint window, click on slideshow at the very top. Okay, hold on. You need to go up there to the 3 dots in the left corner and make that full screen first. One of those 3 dots in the corner is your full screen. Very top of the red right there.
I see home, insert.
No, above that, 3 dots. The green one.
Ha, okay.
Okay, now you'll want to click play from start on the left corner. Yep, double click that.
Just
There
went
you
away.
go.
Okay. Are we good?
Yep, we're good. Go ahead.
Okay, well, the title of my presentation is The Ambassador, an Ending and a Beginning. And Bobby Kennedy was a really marvelous person. We'll get into that a little bit later. See, it's like the beginning of a cross-country race here. I'm getting my pace. There's some aspects of our perception that I wanted to bring to the forefront in the beginning. And those are some terms that we may not keep in mind and I think should be mindful of. The first one is false flag. I think a lot of people in the public are not aware of what false flag is and how people can do things that are contrary to what they want in order to achieve the result by getting resistance and frustration. So false flag. The next one is cui bono. It's a Latin term for who benefits. It's a very good discipline to have when trying to figure out what is the reason for something happening. If you look at who benefits, where does the money flow from, where does the money flow to, it very often is a way to find out what is going on. Target fixation. In flight training at Pensacola, they told us about target fixation, where fighter pilots would be doing a strafing run and they would get so intent in diving at their target that they would forget to pull out and they would crash into the target. And I think some of us from time to time get target fixation and don't look at the big picture. And it's just a good discipline. Polarization. We see a heck of a lot of polarization in our society. We've been conditioned to look at things as good, bad, black, white, hot, cold, and so on, instead of realizing that in between the two poles in any polarized situation lies about 90% of what comprises our lives and what we're affected by. So when I am confronted with the emotion to like make a decision quickly because of a polarized concept, I try to look at where the middle ground is. Another one a lot of people may not be aware of is called amygdala hijack. In the brain, we have a gland called the amygdala. And when we're put under too much pressure, the amygdala secretes cortisol and adrenaline, causing us to go into fight or flight mode. And that makes us really unable to make rational decisions, makes us jumpy and impulsive, and very much influenced by polarized thinking. And with all of the high intensity news that goes on, with all the polarized conversation, the accusations and so on, the desire to be right, it creates a lot of amygdala hijack. So one way to get around amygdala hijack is to look at somewhere in life where we feel artistic or where plants or music or something that takes us into our right brain. Conspiracy theorist. A lot of us have been called that over and over. Another good one is tinfoil hatter. Well, all of us who are speaking and most of you in the audience, I think we should call ourselves platinum hatters. Tinfoil is too cheap. We've paid the dues, gone the distance, spent the dollars, done the research, and we actually are conspiracy theorists. But a conspiracy theorist is really a lie detector. So thank you and congratulations to all of us. Yeah, that's pretty much it for that. So the next thing is I'm very pleased to talk about truth right now, because I think that this whole thing that we're involved in, all of us, has to do with truth, the denial of truth, the obstruction of truth, the fabrication of false truth. And in his book, God School 9/11 and JFK, Bruce Detorius made a wonderful quote, which is on the screen now. If we would live together in peace, peace requires trust, trust requires truth. So I have a few quotes here on truth. Maybe it'll hit a soft spot or a warm spot, but I think it's good for us to remember that the denial of truth is why we are here. When truth is replaced by silence, the silence is a lie. The most confused you will ever get is when you try to convince your heart and spirit of something your mind knows is a lie. The tyrant dies and his rule is over. The martyr dies and his rule begins. The greatest mistake of a movement has been trying to organize a sleeping people around specific goals. You have to wake the people up first, then you'll get action. Winston Churchill said, "A lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to put its pants on." And he also said, "Men occasionally stumble over the truth, but most of them pick themselves up in a hurry and hurry off as if nothing happened." H.L. Mencken said, "If a politician found he had cannibals among his constituents, he would promise them missionaries for dinner." The truth doesn't always set you free. People prefer to believe prettier, neatly wrapped lies. In a room where people unanimously maintain a conspiracy of silence, one word of truth sounds like a pistol shot. When you cut pieces out of the truth to avoid looking like a fool, you end up looking like a moron. And before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. And last one by George Bernard Shaw. If you want to tell people the truth, make sure you make them laugh. Otherwise, they will kill you. So I started out as a photographer. My father used to develop photographs to make Christmas cards. And over the years, I discovered that I have the keen eye and hunter instinct, but killing does not appeal to me in any way, sense, or form. I could defend myself if necessary. So my credo is, as a photographer, I take nothing. I'm an impartial observer, an analyst. When something catches my eye, I take aim and press the shutter. I gratefully accept the light God made and what the subject reflects to me. I am an aggressive hunter. My weapon is a glass gun. I cause no harm. When I was little, it was back in the days where cap guns were just fine. And so every kid I knew wanted to be Roy Rogers or Gene Autry. And here I am with a full-blown cowboy suit on. Went fishing with my dad at Clear Lake, learned a little bit about my hunter instinct, catching fish. At one point, I thought I could be a pro baseball player. Played the accordion. There's this story about welcome to heaven, Mr. Jones, here's your harp. Welcome to hell, Mr. Smith, here's your accordion. However, the accordion was really marvelous in that it helped with coordinated thinking and brought the spirit of music to me. Got to race quarter midgets as a youth as well, learned about competition and precision. And when I was little, I lived in Mountain View, which is very near Moffett Field Naval Air Station, where anti-submarine warfare took place. They had blimps there, as you see in the picture. Later on, they developed anti-submarine warfare aircraft, and the P-3 Orion was constantly present flying over the house. This was in the early 1960s, the late 50s, and the communist threat was brought to us largely from Project Paperclip, which was described earlier so well by others. And the anti-communist meme was being broadcast widely. We saw pictures of missiles in Russia. We saw pictures of missiles in Cuba, and everybody was made to be very fearful. Khrushchev, the premier of the Soviet Union, was very kinetic and outspoken. And then we had John and Robert Kennedy. And one of the things I've learned through my research is that John Kennedy was more of the social, intellectual animal, and Bobby Kennedy over time became the strategic thinker, and he was very, very essential in the campaign for John Kennedy's presidency as well as helping through the Cuban Missile Crisis. During that time, John Kennedy's Joint Chiefs of Staff, shown here in this picture, wanted to commit a preemptive nuclear strike on the Soviet Union before they got missiles and bombs sufficient to do us in. And there is a quote where Kennedy comes out of a conference talking to these people where they proposed that preemptive strike, where he said something to the effect of, "And we call ourselves the human race." During the Cuban Missile Crisis, we were very aggressive because Cuba was the place where Russia had put some missiles. Rather interesting because the United States also had armaments in Turkey and other places very close to Russia. And a broad thinker might look at the situation in the Ukraine as rather similar in that Russia could be conceiving of the NATO move into what used to be the former Soviet Union as something similar psychologically to the Cuban Missile Crisis. So here in this picture, we have P-3 Orion and destroyers near Cuba looking out for submarines. And lo and behold, there were submarines there. And lo and behold, the United States military started dropping practice torpedo or practice depth charge on the submarine. And unbeknownst to us, they had a nuclear torpedo that they could have launched. And in one of the submarines, they had to vote 3 out of 3 of the commanding officers whether or not to use that. 2 of the officers on the submarine voted yes, and this man here, Vasily Arkhipov, voted no. And it's pretty well acclaimed that that man's brave decision not to use the nuclear torpedo possibly saved the world from World War III. During that time, people were building bomb shelters. Here you can see people laying rebar and putting forms up. You see air vents and so on, an entry hatch. People were very serious. We were very seriously worried about what was going to happen with Russia. Here's a picture of the inside of an air raid shelter or a bomb shelter. And in school, they had duck and cover drills where they had us hunker under our desks as though that would protect us from a nuclear blast and the heat and the radiation afterwards. Some of the kids were scared. I wasn't scared. It just seemed unbelievable. Maybe I was isolating myself from what could have been a real fear, but I wasn't as fearful as I was suspicious. At that time, also because of the above ground testing, there was strontium-90 in the milk because of above ground nuclear tests. And it was in the newspapers, and we were scared to drink milk at school. Well, I went to high school and I surfed at Santa Cruz. I played the guitar. This is a picture at college, Whittier College. You can see on the cable spool I'm sitting on, there was a McCarthy sticker. My 2 roommates were for McCarthy. I was for Bobby Kennedy. Most people at that time felt that we might end up dying in a nuclear holocaust. So my attitude about graduation was rather cavalier. Then I enlisted in an Aviation Reserve Officer Candidate program and went into the Navy to become an officer and a flight student. And we went through the rigorous obstacle course. We had competition events. And then finally, I was commissioned as an ensign and was going to flight school at Pensacola Naval Air Base. That's a T-34, the aircraft that I flew in. There was too many people in the flight program, and they had a lull, not enough planes, not enough instructors, and I was able to get an early out, honorable discharge. But before that, I experienced the ejection seat, and I did some experiments for the Naval Aerospace Medical Institute on motion sickness, because when an astronaut would go up in a spacecraft, if they had a full pressure suit on and they vomited, it would be fatal. After that, I started doing photographs at county fairs and automobile shows and stuff. I made photo buttons, and I saw thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people and took their pictures. I came to know humanity quite well. Had a 33 Ford 3-window coupe. Went fly fishing in New Zealand. And I was married in the ruins of Machu Picchu by a drunk police chief. The story is too long to tell. It was a wonderful experience. Been to Cairo, seen the Great Pyramids, been inside the Great Pyramid. There's my brother Fred. Marvelous experience. I've caught frisbees in Kathmandu, slept in a crashed airplane on Corn Island near Nicaragua. There I am with the boss of the export company I worked for 20 years at a trade show in Singapore. I've traveled to 65 countries and met thousands and thousands of people from different cultures, and hence the foundational love of humanity, which I have. I've flown on propeller aircraft, flown on turbine engine aircraft, 747s, et cetera, all the way down to 727. And I was fortunate enough to fly on the Concorde from London Heathrow to Washington, DC. There's a picture I took at Mach 2. What an experience that was. So now we're going to talk about Robert Kennedy. Bobby was born in 1924 in a very large family. Joseph Kennedy, actually all the Kennedys seem to enjoy the nighttime preoccupation, which ended up in producing children, and they produced a lot of them. You can see John Kennedy, Joseph Kennedy Sr., Bobby and Teddy, and the sisters. There was Joseph, John, Rosemary, Kathleen, Eunice, Shriver Kennedy, Patricia, Robert, Jean Ann, and Teddy Kennedy. Of those, Joseph Sr. died in a plane crash. Rosemary Kennedy had a frontal lobotomy and was pretty much out of commission most of her life. Kick Kennedy, Kathleen Kennedy died in a plane crash. John Kennedy was assassinated. Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. And John Kennedy Jr. died in a suspicious plane crash. Some of our researchers have done some marvelous work on that subject. Bobby started out pretty much as a mama's boy. He was not able to compete with his eldest brother, Joseph, or John. He was quite sensitive, religious, and shy. But over time, he learned to be a ferocious competitor in sports, and he learned to strategize how to negotiate and how to fight for what he wanted. Here he is when John Kennedy appointed him to be his campaign manager. Here he is campaigning for John. He became a very astute lawyer. He worked for the Joseph McCarthy anti-crime movement and was very powerful in helping to convict some very nasty mafia characters. Here he is with Jimmy Hoffa, head of the Teamsters Union, and Jimmy Hoffa learned to hate Bobby Kennedy with a passion. And here he is saying, I've told you before, and I'll tell you again, the strong survive and the weak disappear. We do not intend to disappear. And a lot of people feel that Bobby Kennedy was the real pain in the butt for a lot of people. And that the story goes that Bobby was the tail of the dog and John was the head of the dog. And if you want a dog to silence, you don't cut off the tail, you kill the head. And hence, perhaps the assassination of Big Brother John. J. Edgar Hoover pretty much despised the Kennedys. Hoover had been in office for a long, long time, and he called himself the SOG, seat of government. He felt that he had outlived and been in office more than several other presidents, and he resented the force that the Kennedy brothers had on him. And there was talk that they were going to force him into retirement. So when the head law enforcer of the country doesn't like the president and vice president, and the attorney general, it doesn't bode well. And here, J. Edgar Hoover is seen with Lyndon Johnson. They were neighbors in Texas. They cared a lot about each other. And there are some stories that Lyndon Johnson may have been involved in the JFK assassination, and in so doing, being friends with J. Edgar Hoover didn't hurt, because Hoover did the lion's share of the research in the Kennedy assassination. Here's the headline when John Kennedy was killed and Johnson is sworn in. Here's the picture of Bobby, Kennedy, and Jackie getting off the airplane when John Kennedy's body has been flown by force back to Washington, D.C., stolen away from an autopsy in Dallas, which prevented the country probably from having the autopsy that Kennedy deserved. He had a military autopsy, and most of us know the results of that. We'll certainly find out more during this conference. Here's Teddy and Bobby, along with Jackie, marching in the funeral procession for John Kennedy. And I will always remember the drum beat, the drum cadence while that was going on. It's stuck in me for the rest of my life. And here's the famous picture of little John Jr. saluting as Kennedy's casket goes by. Here's a picture taken later with Bobby and Kennedy at the gravesite. They moved John Kennedy's body, and this picture comes from Robert Groden's book. And in the picture, there's a picture of a wooden box. And there are some theories that that box may have contained a lot of evidence, perhaps the brain, perhaps bullet fragments, perhaps brain skull fragments, really isn't known. And there they are moving the casket to the new gravesite. And here is Lyndon Johnson announcing that he will not seek nor will he accept the nomination of the Democratic Party, which pretty much opened the door for Bobby Kennedy to do what he probably really didn't want to do from a personal standpoint, but from deep within him, from an honor standpoint, I believe he really wanted to become president so he could stop the war in Vietnam and stop the rise of the intelligence community and probably dig down deep and reveal to the country who the real assassins were of his big brother, John. So there's Bobby from a campaign poster. One second. You'll hear later about his campaign with me. There's another campaign poster of him. He was loved by the people. They came out of the woodwork to see him when he campaigned. When John Kennedy was assassinated, Bobby Kennedy went into a very deep depression. And many people think that it was that mourning experience that really brought his humanity to the surface. Having been such a harsh and calculating attorney, going after mafia criminals and so on, had been one side of him. But as he aged, he discovered humanity, and he was really a man of the people. He took the time to be intimate with people. He took a trip to Appalachia, where the coal mining was very brutal on the economy, and people were suffering greatly. In Kentucky, 8,200 children, 75 to 85% of them were underweight, and the federal school lunch program offered little relief because most of the schools didn't have electricity or running water. A lot of times people had to pretend to be physically disabled or blind, which is physically disabled, or abandon their spouses in order to receive federal aid. One of the people pulled Bobby aside and said that he respected him. And Bobby said, why? And he said, because you have mud on your shoes. He said, when Lyndon Johnson came here, he landed in a helicopter and they rolled out a carpet and he stood on the carpet talking at us. And you walked around amongst us. I'll never forget seeing that mud on your shoes. Here's a picture of a disabled coal miner in Kentucky. Here's a picture of a man called Cliston Johnson, who sat down with Bobby Kennedy. He had several children, 15 kids, and he said he only got $112 in food stamps. And you can imagine what it's like to try to feed a family of 15 on that money. He said, the more children you've got, you just add a little more water to the gravy. And at the end, Johnson said to Bobby, you ought to come to my house. Did you ever see 15 kids in 3 beds? And Bobby, having been the father of several kids on his own, made a joke saying, well, I'm moving in that direction. So this is the seminal moment for me in my, I'll call it career in research study. I started out in photography in 1957 with a little Brownie bullet camera. Ironic, it was called a bullet. And then on the left at the bottom, there's a Russian reflex camera I got when I was traveling overseas. Then I got a Minolta SRT 101. And photography became a big part of me. Here's a picture of me being a tripod. I also did a lot of writing. And this is the picture, the moment that really locked me in. It was the spot weld into assassination research. As a photographer at Whittier College, the editor of the newspaper and his associate said, come on, Bobby's downtown, let's go see him. So we went down to La Habra, and I was standing in the street, and the convertible that Bobby was in came by not 5 feet away from me, and he was looking the other way. And I said, hey, Bobby, I'm over here. And he turned around and he looked at me, and I looked him in the eye, and he said, I'm on your campaign staff at Whittier College. And he looked at me and he said, good, I need all the help I can get. We shook hands, and I took this picture, and 3 days later, he died. It destroyed me. And I have to say, the look in his eye penetrated my soul. I did a photo essay on eyes in college, and the eyes are the pathway to the soul. These are the negatives that I took. There's one more. I must have cut it off because it was the best one, but I still have those. Where do we go?
You're there. Well, you
Okay,
were.
so, all right. So this is the movie we just saw. It's an amazing movie. If you get a chance to watch it, you can see it on Prime Video, but it's very, very powerful. Okay, I realize what is the end point of my presentation? We had a break and we ended a little bit late. How much longer do I have?
Casey, how much time?
We got about five or 6 minutes that he can do this, and then we're going to open up for some questions.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, I'll express through it. Okay, so we've endured a lot. Those of us that are older have lived through a lot of the assassinations of the 60s, and we can handle the truth. In 1967, the CIA came up with the term conspiracy theorist, and it's been used as a derogatory term for people who are researching truth. And we need to let people know that a conspiracy theorist is a lie detector. Whistleblowers are people that tell true stories at great risk. And Juan Ramiro was a kitchen help, but he told the truth. Sandra Serrano told the truth, and she was harassed by Enrique Hernandez, who probably was CIA interrogator, who tried to influence her to change her story. Vincent DiPietro, he was there as well. He saw a girl in a polka dot dress, tried to say so. And again, Hernandez influenced him. Dwayne Wolfer worked for the LA Police Department, and he horribly failed to produce good forensic evidence with regard to the bullets, the bullet holes in the facility, and so on. Here they are examining, there's a picture of them examining holes in the door frame, and then they ended up losing the door frames. Here, Thomas Noguchi is working to establish the trajectory of the bullet that killed Kennedy. Noguchi said all 3 bullets that killed Kennedy came from behind at a point blank range, from 1.5 to 3 inches from his ear. Vincent Bugliosi, interestingly enough, wrote a book that most JFK assassination researchers looked down upon. Yet, when it came to Bobby's assassination, he was a tiger campaigning for the truth and looking for corruption in the LA Police Department. Philip von Bragg analyzed a audio recording that heard that there was 13 gunshots when the gun that Sirhan was supposedly using only could fire 8. Paul Schrade has been a hero. He was wounded during the assassination, and he has been campaigning forever to try to bring truth to the assassination and uncover the lies that have been created around it. Here he is a couple of years ago when I interviewed him at his home in Beverly Hills. Shane O'Sullivan has done some marvelous work on the Bobby Kennedy assassination. Anything he's done is very much well worth reading or watching his film. Lisa Pease wrote a monumentally good book, A Lie Too Big to Fail. She is a passionate researcher, very sincere, and a person that we all would benefit from knowing. Here, the Kennedy family is praying over Bobby's grave. Okay, Robert Kennedy Jr. I was going to show a video clip, but there's not time. At the ending of a movie called Amistad, an African slave who's going into trial to determine whether he is going to be a slave or freed, says he knows he would not be going in alone because he went back to the deep depths of history to his ancestors and beckoned them to come and help. And he said, I know they will come because at this moment in time, I am the only reason they ever existed in the first place. I've met Robert Kennedy Jr. several times, looked in his eyes, listened to what he says, and John Kennedy was assassinated, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, and today Bobby Kennedy Jr. is being assassinated by the media as a person, and his work is being ignored. Here, Thomas Noguchi states about the bullet wound to Bobby Kennedy, and here, Governor Newsom states that he is denying parole, even though the parole board has recommended it. And Governor Newsom says that he feels that Sirhan is a risk to society. He's been a model prisoner. Governor Newsom, I don't even want to talk about him. Sirhan is in jail. His brother has a home in Pasadena waiting for him. I believe the man deserves to see daylight, have a restaurant meal, and live a little bit of life because he was probably a Manchurian candidate. Here's, all right. Okay, I'll conclude here with a short little poem that I wrote. When taps has been played and the prayers have been made, remember how deep the bodies are laid. Dig hard and go deep for the truth. Okay, I think we can open it up for questions right now. And once again, speaking of truth, here is that Bruce DeTorres' statement again. Our urges must be examined and comprehended and self-control acquired if we would live together in peace. Peace requires trust. Trust requires truth. You who are listening and you who will be speaking are the truth discoverers and the truth declarers. Thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I'm not the expert on the Bobby Kennedy assassination, but any questions you have, I will field so long as they wish me to do so.
All right, Peter, thank you very much. Can we give a round of applause for Pete Hymans? All right, I'll open it up for some questions. Are there any questions out there? First of all, let me ask a question to you guys. How many of you have seen this movie, Bobby? If you haven't seen it, it's a pretty dramatic movie, and it covers a lot of aspects of the assassination itself. But at the same time, you have probably 25 to 30 different points of view, and it does remind a lot of us of the John F. Kennedy assassination from points of view. And I know Larry Rivera goes into that later on with his points of view on how you would view the assassination of John Kennedy. Any others have questions? On the movie, I don't know if you've heard this, it's from Larry Rivera. Where was Thane Eugene Cesar, right?
Yes.
We didn't see him in the movie. Where would he be in that film? Because I thought he was right behind the Bobby
Okay.
Kennedy.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this film, it's been pointed out there are several discrepancies. And the only character who is fully legitimate is Juan Romero, the busboy. Some of the other peripheral characters and so on are not exactly as the way it went. Carl Euchre is not shown either. So the movie was meant mostly to portray the tragedy of the assassination more so than the details.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, any other questions? See if we have any out there. Okay, well, I think that that concludes this portion. And again, Peter, thank you very much.
I wonder if I could say just
we're
one
gonna-
more. Can I say just
Sure,
one more
we have a
thing?
question up. I'm sorry, David. Yes. Is that from our Zoom?
Go ahead, Peter. You had one more thing to say?
Yeah, I know it may be controversial, but Robert Kennedy Jr. has written a book that is a bestseller and it's gotten no press. And I'm not going to say whether it is right or it's wrong, but it has been suppressed. And we know about censorship. We know how Facebook and Google and other entities have been suppressing and manipulating the truth. And I suggest that you read that book and make decisions of yourself, for yourself, because there are things in that book that are phenomenal. And real quick, like it's 435 pages long and it has 2,369 references. The book is not just by Robert Kennedy Jr. It is a compilation of many details, many statements and facts from other people. And we deserve the truth. That's what we stand for. Please avail yourself to that book and see what you think. Thank you so much.
Peter Hyman, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Pete, very much.